All right, here on Locals Only Podcast with Brandon, Jeremiah, and Jake. Guys, if you want to do a quick introduction of yourself.
Brandon, you want to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. So we have our own podcast called the Racks, Packs, and Camper Talk podcast. We'll probably get into that a little bit more as the show goes on. But my name is Brandon. I own Yellowstone Outfitters. My grandpa and great grandpa used to own it, and then me and my wife took it over, and we didn't change a lot, but took off running with it, and it's always been something that I knew I was going to do since I was a little lad. So that's what I do. I just do hunting trips, sightseeing trips, fishing trips, trail rides, and about everything in between that you guys can imagine. So that's a little bit about me.
Cool.
Jeremiah, you want to go?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not an outfitter by any means, but I guide for an outfitter out of Cody named Lost Creek Outfitters, and do some summer trips with Brandon. And let me think here. Yeah, I just kind of float around, and I've worked a few ranch jobs here and there, and now I work for Brandon during the wintertime, starting colts and kind of just living the good life, bouncing around and doing what I want.
Yeah, he reeled you in, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. My name's Jake. I basically same as Jeremiah. I work for an outfit in Cody, same outfitter as Jeremiah, Lost Creek Outfitters. We do that in the fall, and then in the summertime, we're running pack trips with Brandon. I do go to Alaska in August, so it's something that I started doing a couple years ago, and I'm there for a month. But I do that as well, and then in the wintertime, like right now, me and my wife are starting some colts for Lost Creek Outfitters, Jimmy Owens, and we're working with Jeremiah and Brandon on that too. But same as Jeremiah in that aspect as well, just kind of float around. We worked at a couple different ranches in the winter and just find whatever pays decent and has a house to live in, really.
Yeah, that's cool, man. What are you doing when you go up to Alaska?
So I work for an outfitter, like I said, Big Game Backcountry Guides. Riley Pitts owns it. We do Dall sheep primarily is what people come up there for, but we also do caribou and grizzly. We're based out of the north slope of the Brooks Range, about 70 miles southeast of Prudhoe Bay, Alaska.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
that's real cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
So you're really mixing it up, getting a little flavor for everything.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a change up for sure, but I like that. So
yeah, keeps things lively, I bet.
Oh yeah.
Cool. I guess for your guys' audience, I know, just firing up your podcast. I listened to the last episode and I really enjoyed it, and definitely actually want to touch on some of the stuff you guys were talking about. I feel like you had a good topic for that one as like the overarching theme of it. But for anybody listening on your guys' side, my name's Cory. I met Brandon, I did a elk hunting trip with him back in 2019 with a bunch of my family members and friends and my buddy's old man and stuff. And truly like a life-changing experience for me. I mean, I've been hunting my whole life, like since I was 7 years old. But I'm in Pennsylvania. So the style of hunting out here is obviously way different on the East Coast. Primarily whitetail hunting and duck hunting and stuff, and doing some pheasant, turkey, all the good stuff back here. But man, like that was my first time hunting elk, and I just feel like it set the bar so high for elk hunting in general. Just like what you guys are doing, I know you guys don't take it for granted, but like because it is your everyday life for the most part, it's truly special. And like legitimately, like I don't go a week without thinking about that trip. It was just like truly a life changer and such a cool experience. So, I mean, Brandon and I spent those 10 days together. He was kind of guiding for myself and my father. So, well, we spent a lot of time together and got to know each other. But my dad had been out there four times prior to that with like his buddies and stuff growing, like when they were in their 30s and 40s and everything with Brandon's grandpa Lynn. So it's cool. Like that part of it has been real cool. How it's been like generational, and like obviously I didn't see the passing down of the torch for the most part. Lynn was in camp when I was out there, so it was great to meet him as well and the rest of your family. But yeah, it's that's how we met. And then I have like this apparel company called Locals Only Project back here. So that's what this podcast on my side is for. And a lot of it is just kind of highlighting local business owners and stuff. That's kind of like the mission behind the project, just keeping mom and pop shop alive, is like less chain restaurants, more, family owned deal, and trying to promote stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, to get you guys on the horn here, I'm fired up. It's gonna be a fun one for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. To before I forget about it, there's one thing when your dad came out. I have a picture. I found a picture that some hunters sent us from way back when. It's your dad, and it's I don't know. He was a young man when he came hunting, and there he is with this guy, just with Grizz Turner was actually the guide,
Yeah.
and it's an old like crappy picture. And there's your dad and him just sitting there. I gotta send it to you. It's pretty cool. I didn't
Oh
even
yeah.
recognize him at first. I'm like, gosh, he looks familiar. And I'm like, holy crap, that's Cory's dad. So that was kind of neat. And then the other thing I want to touch base on is like you coming out. Like that's one thing that I think is pretty neat. Is like you come as clients and leave as family and friends. Like we got to know each other and we stay in touch about. It feels like about every year. Not
Oh yeah.
by any means like every month or anything, but we always stay in touch with each other, and you make friendships out of this too.
Yeah, 100%. That was the coolest part. Like as beautiful as the landscape is, and the experience of the ride in, and obviously the hunt itself, like just the camaraderie around camp with, I think Tanner was in there at the time,
Yep.
Landon, all those guys, Kendra, Lynn, like I said, like we had a blast. It was just so much fun, like eating dinner, having a couple beers at the end of the night, especially after everybody killed, because we went. So there were six of us, and then two other guys in the camp that were outsiders from our perspective, and we went 8 for 8. So it was just crazy success, and everybody got really nice bulls, like super happy all around. But and like we were done pretty early, so we had a couple days to kill to really kick back and do some fishing and stuff. But yeah, I mean, just it literally felt like time traveling going back there. But it was awesome, man. Yeah. And like you said, this lifetime friendships, and even, when we got out of camp, got out of town, grabbed dinner, went out on the town one night. Landon was getting himself in trouble maybe a little bit at the cowboy bar, but we'll leave those stories off the record. But yeah, I guess just to go a click deeper, I know you kind of mentioned it, Brandon, but just like you want to give everybody the full background on, I guess, how Yellowstone Outfitters got started. I know it was you mentioned your great grandpa who started it, and kind of how everything played out from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it goes back a ways. My great grandpa, oh man, 70s, 80s, right around there, bought some camps in Star Valley, Wyoming, which is, for those of you hunt deer, you probably know is like Region G for deer, and then like the Grays River, South End, Smiths Fork Road, some of those places. I'm sure not many people know, but in case you do, and he had. I'd be lying if I gave an exact number on how many camps he had, but he had a handful of camps. Then my grandpa married my grandma, and he jumped right into it. Man, he's probably been guiding and outfitting for pushing 50 years now. So he's just been. They had those camps for a while, man. It's cool to hear the stories and like grandpa and my uncle, or even my great uncle, Uncle Billy Peterson. They'll just start telling stories, and it's some of the same stories, but I feel like I've never heard them before, even though I've heard them 100 times. Like there's always something they forgot, and it's like, you just sit there and listen. But yeah, so they did that for a while, and then they kind of could see that the deer was going downhill in Region G, and they knew that the hunting wasn't going to be as good down there. and they saw this opportunity. They actually bought the wagon train, that was a neat experience too. I don't know if you guys seen the movie City Slickers, but that's kind of what it was like, except without the cows. Like you just moved around the wagons, moved camp, had day rides, and it was a big crew. It was really neat. I grew up doing that, and then that next year they bought Hawks Rest, the hunting camp there, and they went in partnership. They had Yellowstone Outfitters, and they've been there since '93 now.
Hmm.
Yeah, so they sold those other camps. Heck, when they had those other camps, like my mom and uncle and aunts, they were young, they were little, even when they bought the wagon train and the Hawks Rest, and so it's cool. Like the aunts and mom, like they all may have families and aren't able to help as much as they'd probably like, but everybody helps out the minute they get a day off or sports are done or whatever it is, they're there helping. Like it's very family oriented, and like I always tell people, I'm like, family is the best help you have 95% of the time. The other 5%, you want to choke the life out of them.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes in a family business. I don't care if someone tells me that in the family business that everything's cheery, like they never get in arguments or never are like confused or there's two bosses or whatever, they're full of crap. So that's the biggest thing is help. Family's the best help 95% of the time, but got off a little track there. But yeah, so we just been at Hawks Rest, and that's been my home. I always joke, people like, where do you go home for the winter? I'm like, no, I that's not my home. My home is up at Hawks Rest and Turpin Meadows. I go on an unwanted vacation during the winter.
Yeah, that's like your true house is like your vacation home, kind of. You kick back a little bit, and you're not up in a wall tent anymore. Because like how many months technically are you guys pretty much in there?
Man, we're there. I mean, we start setting up the trailhead May 1st. So that's at our Turpin trailhead, which is no home. I mean, there's no house there.
Hmm.
Like it's either a wall tent or a camper there. And then we start going in June 1st, and we're not done till the end of October up there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild. You come back to civilization, everybody's looking at you weird, and you're like, you're the weird ones. It might have been the smell, but
I've thought about that a lot of times. It's like you see this stuff. It's like you look out at that view, you look at Hawks Rest, and like the amount of stars that you could see out there and everything like that, and it's like, and then man-made cubicles and cubicle jobs. It's like, whoa, we went wrong somewhere here, but it's cool that you guys are still doing it. That's for sure.
yeah,
And just let's just touch upon that piece of hunting land and camp that you guys have, just to set the context here for people who aren't as familiar. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the most remote. Well, I guess Bridger Lake, which is not too far away from Hawks Rest, is the most remote location in the lower 48 in terms of like radius or diameter or whatever, to like a paved road. Is that accurate? Am I catching that right?
yeah. From any highway, it's like Hawks Rest is about a mile away from Bridger Lake, and our camp's probably 2 or 3. But yeah, Bridger Lake's the most remote spot in the lower 48. So that's kind of a neat thing. It really hits you when you're back in there. Like when people need to go to the grocery store, or like, oh, I gotta go to the doctor or whatever. Or, I'm gonna charge my phone, and when you get back there, you're like, man, like this landscape is how it was a couple hundred years ago, and this is how it's going to be. I mean, other than, of course, like if you have fires or something like that, but the overall landscape's going to stay the same. It's
Yeah.
not going to change. Like we always joke, or I always think too, I'm like, I see a big tree. There's plenty of caves up there too. I'm always like, what have they seen? Like if they could talk, the amount of big bulls, or like you find arrowheads up there too. So it's like, what kind of Native Americans did you see up here? Like it's pretty surreal when you get up there.
Yeah, it's that's the part of it for me. Like when you're up there, it truly, like at the end of it, like I felt like privileged almost to be up there and with you guys, just because when you think about the sheer number of people that have ever even stepped foot up there, like, and I know there's hikers that go through there and everything like that in the summer, and like you said, like maybe the Native Americans, and just like the people that are hunting out there. But like outside of that, like in the grand scheme of things, like on a percentage basis of humans that have ever lived, there it's a very, very small number of people that have ever stepped foot on that land up there. And it's a special place because I mean the ride in, again, just to set the context, it's like an 8 or 9 hour ride in on horseback. What, like, is it like 28 miles from the trailhead to camp, something like that?
Yeah, to camp's like 29 something. But yeah, it's a long ways. You've done it before. It's when you think you're getting close, you're not close.
Yeah, you're about halfway. It's like I gotta be close. And that's the one thing. Like my dad was always telling me stories like forever. I was growing up, and that's probably why I hold, um, you know, this place in such high regard. Like I always heard like just these little stories here and there about how beautiful it is and everything like that. And then he always mentioned it was like a longer ride in, but he never gave like the full detail. So then, doing it for the first time, you get about halfway and you're like, oh man, like we got to be close. Like we've been on this horse for 5 hours. And yeah, lo and behold, it's another good 3 hours before you even even remotely close. It's and like I'm obviously like you guys are on horses a hell of a lot more than I am. So it was you feel it for sure. Your ass definitely feels it in hour 6, but man, well worth it once you get there.
Yeah, for sure. That's people ask me all the time. They're like, "What can you guarantee?" I'm like, "The only thing I can guarantee is you're gonna have a sore ass and sore knees. Like that's the one thing I can guarantee you're gonna have. But and see beautiful country. Those are the two things I'll guarantee you.
Yeah, it's that. So that's the other thing. Like with the Teton Wilderness, and you guys probably know more about the ins and outs. Like all three of you, in terms of what you're allowed to do and not to do up there as a protected wilderness land. But like, man, so grateful that it is because, like you said, the way it looked 150 years ago or 500 years ago is pretty much how it looks today. Because you can't use power anything, you can't do anything with wheels up there, which is why you have to go in on the
Where you
horseback.
hiding?
And but like even you have trails cut now or cleaned out for the horses, and if a tree falls down, it has to get cleared with the 2-man saw or some sort of saw or axe or whatever it is. There's no power tools, no anything out there. So it is truly as raw as it has ever been. I don't know if I'm missing anything there. If you guys have anything else, just to chime in on like what you can and can't do out there.
I think that makes it like the cool part of it is where you can't use any like power tools. You got to use, you know, crosscuts and hand saws, and it just makes it, it's maybe not as fun cutting big trees out, but when you're done cutting one out, you're like, yeah, I just did that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you appreciate it more.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And like even just seeing the horses drag the trees in and everything, like you, I don't know, like it sounds like cliche, I guess, coming from my perspective, but like coming from out east, like you literally feel like you're in a Western movie. Like it is the real deal experience, especially when like you look over to your right and like Lynn's 20 feet away. And like to me, he's just like as cowboy gets, like the way he speaks, the way he carries himself, like so polite, so kind to anybody. And then like I heard him yell like once or twice when shit was going sideways with like just like business related stuff or like a horse was acting up or whatever, and you see the side of him, and it's like, damn, like you don't want to cross that line with Lynn. And at the time, he's like friggin' 75 years old. I'm like, he would whoop any of our asses any given second. Like,
Yep.
Yeah,
how's Lynn doing, Brandon?
good. He's doing good. He had an accident a little while back, and if excuse me, if you wouldn't have known him before the accident, you wouldn't think anything's wrong with him, and there really isn't. I mean, it was a long recovery, but he's pretty much back to 100%. So, pretty
That's good to
grateful for
hear.
that. So,
That's good. And he's back in camp and everything too, right? He's ridden in.
oh yeah, yep. He comes in every fall. Someone's got to yell at someone or keep that camp
Yeah.
going. No, he comes in and he does whatever he wants, which he's earned it. So yeah, he comes in there. He goes. It's kind of funny. He wanted to go wolf hunting one day, which just for anybody that knows, that is legal in the state of Wyoming. And we have to have tags where we're at. And so he was like, you can get 2 wolf tags, and he's like, I'm going to go wolf hunting. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. I don't care. And, so I check on him, not gonna lie. Like after that accident and stuff, you get kind of worried. So I radio back to camp or inReach back to camp, and I'm like, is Grandpa back yet? And I'm like, back? He hasn't left yet. And I'm like, no worries. And then they text me. He's like, he left. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, he's gone for 3 or 4 hours. About an hour later, they text me back. He's back. I'm like, he's more or less just wanting to go for a ride. But yeah, no, he comes up there, and if he's up there during the fall, you'll catch him at camp or going to retrieve a bull, and during the spring, you'll catch him on Atlantic Creek fishing. So
Good.
It's pretty cool too that I'm still be able to go up there with him and hang out with him, and he teaches me stuff every day too, or every time he's up there. Realistically, every day there's something that I didn't know or a place I didn't know how to get to, and he'll be like, "Oh, one time." There are a lot of one times.
He's got a story for that, I'm sure. He's truly a living legend. Like I've only been around him for 10 days, and you just know anybody in that general area, I'm sure they know Lynn Madsen, and well deserved on that reputation. What am I could be off here. Was he like honored for something not too long ago or something in the state of Wyoming? Am I making that up?
Yeah, no, he got the Wyoga basically honorary lifetime award for outfitter.
Oh, no shit.
So I asked him. I remember when I was younger, I asked him, and I'm like, "What do you got to do that?" Grandpa's like, "Retire." But no, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of guys in there too. Like just throw a couple names like Jake Clark, John Winters. They're all cut from the same cloth, and like you just respect. Like if I don't know if you didn't know them, even when you do see them, like you just respect those guys. They've done a lot in their lifetime and are probably tougher than we will ever be. And so like those are just 2 guys that got the same award, and Jake and Jeremiah. I don't know if you guys met John Winters before.
I haven't. No.
Yeah, he had the 2 Ocean Pass camp, and he's like just like Jake and my grandpa, but they know Jake Clark. They work for Jake Clark, and he's the same way. Like if anybody ever is like, I don't like they're saying something bad about Jake Clark, I'm like I kind of perk up. I'm like, what? What were you saying? But yeah, no, they're. That even your dad, like you can just see I just thinking like that. Like when I saw your dad, I'm like, yep, he's old school, and that's some of the world I think is missing. Some of that is old school, but they're definitely one of a kind. You can't replace them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think to live that life that you 3 are doing, and what like the guys you mentioned, and what your grandpa did, and you got to be cut from that cloth because it's going to weed you out if you're not. Like it's not for the faint of heart, and I give you guys all the credit in the world, signing up for that every day. Like, yeah, for me, like to go for 10 days and do it, and you think you're roughing it and this and that and the other thing, and it's like it's an experience for me, but it's work for you guys every day. So yeah, tip my hat to you guys there. That's no joke. I honestly, like, even like, not to get deep and everything here, but like it truly like created a sense of perspective for me where it's just like sometimes like I'm bitching about going to work or this or that or the other thing. I'm like, this is nothing compared to what these guys are doing every day. So it's good to have that little reminder for myself every once in a while. But I wanted to circle back real quick. I know you mentioned Lynn going wolf hunting. I want to get the locals' perspective on wolves in general, and wolf season, and hunting wolves, and how much of a pain in the ass they could be for you guys.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a big topic, especially in Wyoming, probably right now.
Yeah.
Because it can go from a ranching aspect to an outfitting aspect. I mean, these guys know, there's a lot of ranchers that lose a lot of beef cows every year to predation from wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think a lot of people think, oh, they just want to annihilate them, they want to get rid of them, and that's not the case. It's the same thing with the bears. Like we know they're here, and they're cool to see. Like I'm not gonna lie, like when you see some wolves working together, like it's the apex predator. Same thing with bears, but they need to be managed. I mean, it's just like anything else, some stuff has to be managed, and I think that's the biggest thing is people think we just want to annihilate them, which I get, back in the day they dang near were, but we've come a long ways from back in the day. And there's the quota. There's quotas, and there's like Wyoming has a predatory zone and where they're trophy game. And so wherever they're trophy game, you have to have tags, and there's a quota set. So say there's like 5 wolves in that quota. As soon as those 5 wolves are met on that quota, that season's closed.
Right.
So it's not like you can just go out there and have a free for all in some of those areas. Now the places that are predator zone, that's where a lot of ranching is, and so it is just like a coyote. You can shoot on sight, but they're trying to deter them from, having predation on beef cows and horses or sheep or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a and like from the outside looking in, and sometimes, at least from what I gather, like a lot of the people making the decisions on the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone and the type of wolves that were reintroduced, and like wolves get a rap in the general public about, like you said, like they are cool, like everybody appreciates them for what they are, but I think like you nailed it. It was just like everything else, it needs to be managed properly, and like you can't just factor in like the cool factor or the fact that they look like dogs or whatever. Like you can't get caught up in that, because it is affecting people's livelihoods. And I don't know, like if you guys have noticed a difference like year over year, like is it better or worse in terms of like the elk numbers, or like you're hearing stories about cattle or anything like that, or is it kind of just been status quo, like what it's pretty much been more or less since they kind of, and like I should ask, like, is that the source of the problem? Like, was it the reintroduction to Yellowstone that kind of have them trickling over, or is it something else?
I think there's probably, and like Jake and Jeremiah both probably have good insight on this, and after I get done, I'd like to hear what they have to say too. And that question should probably be for my grandpa, because he hunted there before the reintroduction, and like those aren't native Wyoming gray wolves. They came from Canada, and my wife knows the exact name and subspecies they are. I don't. So I probably should have asked her, but yeah, they definitely hit it. I mean, we haven't had moose hunting in Hawks Rest for I don't even know. I mean, I can't remember it. So probably since like 2000, and maybe I was there. Probably 2005 or something like that, maybe even later.
Wow.
And they say they have the brain, and they do have brain worm, and ticks do affect them, but the wolves were probably a big issue on it. I mean, moose winter in deep snow country. They got long legs, they can go through snow country, but when you get an animal that averages 150 pounds all the way up to 200 pounds, and there's 6 or 7 of them in a pack, and they can run on top of the snow, and there's a moose that's breaking trail through 3 or 4 feet of snow, they're not going to stand a chance. And moose aren't typically herd animal like elk. You might see a handful of them hanging out together during the rut, or even maybe a little bit during the winter. You'll have some bulls bachelor'd up, but there's not going to be more than 12 or 13. Like, I don't think I've ever seen. Have you guys seen anything?
No, yeah.
No.
At where our camp is over by DuBois, I mean, there's a few moose, and you see 1 or 2 every year, and I don't know if it's just the area that they don't hang around, but I mean, since I've been there, last year was the first year I had heard and seen wolves in our area. And it definitely showed, in my opinion, the elk come archery season. Like, we had the numbers of elk yet, but it seemed like they just weren't talking like they usually do. And I don't know if it was more or less the heat that was causing it, or just having them wolves in the area kind of shut them up a little bit. So it kind of made hunting a little tougher too. But I can't really put my perspective on wolves because I haven't really been around them. I'm from North Dakota, and we don't have wolves. So
That's I think the elk have adapted. Don't get me wrong; they took a hit there for a while, and the game and fish say our elk numbers are coming back. I do think they are. I don't think they're coming back. The problem is you get maybe some biologists, and I'm not dogging on anybody, but you'll get some biologists that didn't see it before then. And talking to my grandpa, like it took a hit on the elk population there for sure. But the elk, they've adapted. They've you don't see them in the middle of a meadow anymore. They ain't gonna hang out down there. They're very vulnerable down there.
Yeah.
They'll be up on the high plateaus and some burnt timber up on the side. Some basins. Whereas before, I talked to my grandpa and the old timers. They're not. It's not uncommon to see 100 head of elk, 50 head of elk down in the meadow. Um, so they've. I feel like they've kind of adapted to them and figured out how to coexist with them. But like the moose, for example, I don't think we'll ever get a hunting season back in Hawks Rest for moose. And like moose eat willows, and willows are like down by the river on the valley floor. And I remember I do remember this when I was little. And just a little background here, we ride big horses and big mules. Like they're not quarter horse. I mean, some are, but for the most part, they're all draft crosses. And so what that is, I mean, a draft cross can be any type of breed, but just for a quick example, like you get a perch stud and a quarter horse mare, then you have a half draft. But kind of a slang term is draft crosses, and yeah, that's just what we ride. They hold up in that country really good. They have a bit bigger foot. I've rode some tough quarter horses. I've had I had a personal quarter horse that he was a little dude. He died a couple of years ago on a sheep hunt, and he's probably the toughest horse I've ever rode. But if you stood him next to a draft cross at the end of the season, he looked like a gutted gardener snake. Like he was skinny. So those draft crosses hold up pretty good. So back to the willows is you could ride a draft cross, which is 16 hands, 16-1, and they didn't come up to your feet. The willows did not touch your feet. And you probably remember this, Cory. Now you can ride in there and those willows are over your head.
Yep.
I mean, so they're 12 feet, 13 feet tall. And that just goes to show you what happened. When we don't have the moose there to keep the willows under control, they're starting, and they're taking over the meadow too. There's a lot of good grass habitat in there that the willows are taking over because there's nothing there to eat them, and that's what the moose ate.
It's wild how it's all connected and everything kind of affects everything there. And touching on real quick, I know because like I'm even ignorant to this, like all the different types of horses. You guys were kind of touching on it on your podcast that you did, but I would like to get your guys' opinion and like just educate myself and the audience, like different types of horses. I guess like how you guys train them up, in terms of like working with colts, and then I know I forget who said it, but I think one of you guys said that you were riding mules through certain types of country and versus a horse, and just like why you guys might choose a mule over a horse and stuff like that. It was super interesting to listen. So I would love to hear you guys' opinions and stuff on that.
It's a controversial topic.
Yeah, it kind of sounded like it. That was the gist I was getting.
I'd say for the mule, or go ahead, Jake. Say what you.
You're good. I was just gonna say for what half of it is, or probably more than half, is me and Jeremiah started working for Jake Clark, and Jimmy Owens bought his hunting camp, but the hunt camp's just on the other side of the mountain from Yellowstone Outfitters from Hawks Rest. Anyways, that's all they ran was mules, and we would have one horse in camp, and she was the bell mare, and you could ride her most of the time, depending on who was there. But anyways, we would have 30 head or whatever, 25 head, and have a bell mare and just kick the mules loose, and they would stick around her. It's kind of a weird dynamic between the mules, but I think in reality it's because that's kind of how we were taught, I suppose. So, and me and Jeremiah, we've both rode quite a few horses in the mountains, and nothing against them and stuff, but it seems like once you ride or get used to a mule and just how they traverse different obstacles or whatever you want to call it, or go up the mountain, it's kind of hard to go back to a horse, even though like I said, we've ridden horses in the past. But it's just, I feel like it's something that once you start doing it and you do it for so long and then you start riding horses, you're like, man, I kind of wish I had my mule. But at the same time, we've rode plenty of mules where like kind of want to I'm not going to go off topic here and go on a rant, but kind of wish I had a horse right now and didn't have to deal with this dang mule.
So like, what do you like when you say like they traverse the terrain differently? Is it like, are they a little more sure-footed, a little more agile? Like what is the difference?
I think that's opinionated too. A lot of people say they are more sure-footed than a horse. I'm not going to say they 100% are all the time, because I've had a mule flip over or go ass over tea kettle in an arena before on flat ground, and even on the trails, trotting through a meadow or something. I've had a mule trip and fall down and whatnot, but it just to me it seems like they almost think about their hoof placement a little bit better
Mm-hmm.
in some aspects of it. And like I said, nothing against horses. There's a lot of really good mountain horses up there, but in my opinion, when you're on a mule and you get in a bind, they'll look at themselves and look at their feet and be like, okay, I need to do this and this to get out of this situation. Versus some horses I've rode, when they get in a bind, like say a bog or something, or just a tight spot, they kind of not freak out, but get a little flighty and they're like, oh, shoot, we got to get out of here quick because we're not in a good spot. Versus, like I said, a mule will most of them will think about it a little bit, and
Yeah.
they have a lot of self-preservation.
Hmm.
Like, you could probably ride a horse off a cliff. I don't think you could ride a mule off a cliff. They'd be like, screw you, buddy. But like I said, that's just my opinion. And I mean, everybody's opinion's worth something, but that's what I think anyways.
Jury's still out on it, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it'll ever end. And I have nothing against riding horses in the mountains. I mean, I ride quite a few, or try to anyways. We all try to, but seems like we're kind of stuck on the mules right now. So
That's what you got, yeah. And I'll say, like, from my perspective, like, obviously, I want to hear Jeremiah and Brandon. I want you guys to weigh in too, but like, I only have the experience with the horses with Brandon, and dude, I truly like going out there. Like, I knew horses were capable of some incredible shit, and then we went out the first day, and where Brandon took us, I don't even remember what it was called. It was like a new place that him and Kendra were working on over the summer, I think, like cutting some trails and shit. And dude, some of the terrain we were covering, and like up and over fallen timber, and just I was truly in awe of like what the animal was doing with me on its back. And I genuinely like didn't even know horses were capable of doing some of that stuff. So it was just like mind blowing. Like when I'm telling my story, like this story, like from this hunt, which I don't shut the hell up about, like my friends are probably ready to kill me back home here. Cause I feel like any chance I get, I love talking about this trip. Um, that's like one of the first things I always talk about. I'm like, the horses are just friggin' incredible. So, I'll be curious to see what it's like on a mule someday, but, I'll quit yapping,
I got one for you. She's only been rode once, but I got one for you.
Yeah, saddle me in there.
that's the thing. And people even disagree with this. Some people do, but I may have said it earlier, but once you find a good riding mule, or just a good mule in general, but especially a good riding mule, it's really hard to go back to something else. And I'm not saying the mules that we ride all the time are awesome. I mean, we have quite a few different ones that we try and ride, but we have our one or two that we stick to that are with us. But once you find a good one, in my opinion, they're damn near priceless. But how
Yeah.
mules are, their dynamic's just weird. And I mean, they're too smart for their own good, really. And
Hmm.
you almost have to be, you got to be a couple steps ahead of a horse, it seems like. But mules, you almost have to be 5 steps ahead of,
Hmm.
or they'll just turn around and try and find a way to booger you out of something. But
That's pretty neat. No, that's cool to hear. Jeremiah, Brandon, let's see what you
Yeah.
got.
I guess my aspect on mules or perspective, I think some of it is that's just how I was showed or taught, I guess, when I first started. Because, I grew up on a ranch in North Dakota, and when I moved out here, I thought I knew a lot about horses and equine, I guess. And going up there, they showed me that I really don't know nothing. And I think the reason I ride a mule now is that's just the way I was taught. I mean, and some of it, like maybe I haven't rode a good enough mountain horse to switch out or whatever, but I think some of it is too. Like, you can't just take up any horse from, you can't take any horse up to the mountains. Like, they're going to have to take some time, or it's going to take a few years for them to figure out their feet and how to handle themselves up there. You can't take one from a flat grassland and just go straight up there and expect them to walk wherever you want them to, because it's going to be a whole different terrain for them. But I still like riding my mules. it's going to be hard to give them up, especially when you got one that, which it goes for the same as a horse too. If you got one that you have full faith in, it's going to be hard to give that one up. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a matter of preference and how you were raised.
Yeah.
100%. Like, I've got one particular horse that is, I'll ride her anywhere, and she's tougher than anything I've ever seen. Even tougher, actually tougher than that little bay horse I was talking about. And you can do so many different things on her. You can snub colts on her. And I've never rode a good saddle mule, so I'm not going to say that you can't do that on mules. But I know a lot of riding mules that if you tried doing different things on, they would. Jake's right. They are self-preserving. And in my opinion, sometimes they're a little too self-preserving. They might get rid of you in order to save their life. But that's just my opinion. So, like I said, it's 100% how you grew up. You know, you could have this conversation probably 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and have good arguments from both sides. As far as the sure-footed thing, in my opinion, I think that's a myth. I think it's dependent on how that horse was raised and brought up, and training too. Like as far as Jake was talking about the bog, I mean, if you take any horse out there or any mule out there and you sink them in a bog, they ain't gonna like it. I mean, you gotta teach them too. I mean, just as far as being in the mountains, like I've seen new mules I bought, new horses I bought. That first year, they're skinny, they're tired, they don't know how to take care of themselves. The next year, and take care of themselves, and I see it with colts too. When you take a colt in the mountain, them older horses and mules, when they get time to rest and time to eat, they eat and rest. They know that that's their time to take off. Them colts or newer mules, they'll out there and mess around and try and play around, and that's energy they're wasting. And so those new mules and new colts or new horses or however you want to put it, they're going to look skinny. And like you take a mule from back east or a horse and it's grown up there, lived its whole life there, and you bring it to the mountains, its new name might as well be trip, stumble, fart, and fall, because it ain't gonna know how to cross a river. It ain't gonna know how to go up a hill. You know, they gotta get acclimated. Completely different muscles they're using. So I 100% think on the sure-footed thing is it's how they were raised and how they were brought up. You know, like all our home-raised ones, we start taking them in the mountains from day one. We try to find pasture, which isn't always possible, but we try to find pasture that has a little bit of mountain, maybe some holes to dodge, some creeks to cross. And if you take them colts versus maybe some colts from back east, those colts will outperform every day just because they already know how to get around in the mountains. So, you know, the sure-footed thing, that's that, and it's opinion, but that's just my opinion. It's 100% on how they're raised. My opinion. I think, like I said, I've seen both. Where we go back east to buy a lot of horses, especially my uncle. He owns Yellowstone Horse Rentals, and he has, I don't want to say the exact number because he'll probably get mad at me, but I think it's around 3,200 head of horses. And he's probably lying if he said it wasn't. But like I'll see those horses come from back east and our new mules, and their first couple years is pretty rough. Like it's a whole different terrain. I'm not dogging on anything back east. Like there's probably some things back east that our horses couldn't do either. So, like I said, the horse mule aspect, you could go all day. I'm partial to horses. Now packing, this is my opinion. I hate packing horses. Like especially horses that like what we call dude horses that follow us. You think where they follow us, they'd be great in a pack string, but no, they're gonna wrap a tree. They're gonna do this. I hate packing horses, and like good pack mules, there's nothing that beats. You know, I have about 35 mules, and I love packing every single one of them. And there's like it's amazing if you put a set of bear boxes, which are what we say bear boxes, they're just hard panniers, and panniers are what you sometimes see on the pack saddle, packing food or whatever it is, and you put it on a horse, if there's a tight spot, he's gonna hit it into the tree. Or you pack elk antlers on a horse, he's gonna hook the antlers on a horse. And I'm sure a lot of people maybe listening to this are gonna be like, oh, I have the best pack horse, and he doesn't do that. And that might be the case, but in my opinion, like those mules, you can watch them when you have 10 in a string. they'll slow down and they'll suck in their ribs and scoot around a tree and they won't hit that bear box. Or an elk antler. They know where every tine is at. And they might hit it a couple times, but they'll only hit it a couple times before they figure out where it's at. And I think that's brought up too. Like we pack some young mules, and don't get me wrong, we have some wrecks and they have to figure it out, but they seem to figure it out a little bit quicker.
Kind of like becomes part of their body a little quicker than it would on a horse a little bit. Like they kind of get their bearings quicker with whatever they're carrying.
Yeah. Yep. No, for sure. And like I said, it's just a matter of preference. Like I got some horses that I take sheep hunting and I will take them anywhere. It'll probably just like Bitch Creek. Remember we went up Bitch Creek that one time?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's where you killed your bull at, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
And same thing, there's a lot of people there's a lot of horses and mules that couldn't do that, but they're raised into it, and I just like the way you. Oh yeah, there it is. But yeah, sorry, I'll get off that subject. But yeah, it's just a matter of preference, I think.
No. I think that's one subject we will never agree on.
Yeah.
We told Brandon that we would get him a really good ride mule that he can ride, and he pretty much told us to go get Ben.
The next time I'm snubbing you guys up on colts, I'm just going to make sure there's a little bit of slack.
He doesn't want to find out if it's true.
Partially. I also know a lot of guys that got in quite a few mule wrecks.
Oh, yeah.
Jake on the other line.
Yeah. The bad thing is if they're not 100% with you, if you get in a wreck, they know you're in a wreck, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I got this guy now. And they'll make it way worse than it should be.
Well, these guys will test this. Like, if you're mean to a mule,
oh, yeah,
he remembers.
Yeah.
I don't remember. You remember Tanner. JJ is the sweetest. Like, you can put anything on her. She'll ain't catch her anywhere. And I love her to death. I don't know what Tanner did to her. He did something to her. He never would admit to me, but he did something to her because every time he would walk past her, she would gently tap him on the thigh. I mean, it was gently instead of hurt. But I'm like, no. She wanted to kick the teeth out. She would have. And it's like, no, she remembers you, and you did something to pit you. I don't know if you hit her or what you did to her, but she don't like you, and she's never gonna like you now.
I don't doubt that with Tanner. He was full of fire. I think he was only 18 years old when we were in there with him, and once we got, he's a pisser, man. He was a funny son of a bitch. But I remember one night we were all just having a beer or two before dinner was ready, and he started telling stories, him and Landon, and you were talking about like wrestling growing up, and like I think you did pretty well for yourself in high school and stuff, wrestling there. And next thing you know, Tanner's pulling up cell phone videos of him fighting in like the friggin' parking lot of his high school and just throwing down with some dude like twice his size and fucking him up pretty good. So he was built for it. I'm sure he pissed that girl off pretty good.
Yeah, but one thing that everybody will kind of laugh at this, and Jake and Jeremiah know it's just true. If a mule kicks at you and misses, he meant to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can contest that because I've had some bitches reach around with their hind leg and kick my calf when I was on top of them, and I was like, how the hell did you do that?
Probably hurts like a bitch, huh?
Oh, yeah. That doesn't feel great.
I think dealing with any type of livestock, cow, sheep, I've never dealt with chickens, but, horses, mules, don't make you honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting thrown from a horse or a mule or anything like that, and I mentioned earlier, like in your guys' last pod, just talking about like, so side tangent, and like I'm hesitant to even say this, but I was watching. You guys ever watch Band of Brothers? It's like a 10-part series.
Oh, yeah.
On like World War II.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, the show's so friggin' good. I don't know why
It's really good.
I just watched it. It's been out since it's probably been out for 15 years. But as I'm watching it, I forget what battle I was watching or whatever. For whatever reason, it was just bringing me back to being out there in the wilderness. And I was just thinking, like, when you're out there, like you feel safe to an extent because you're with a bunch of people, and if shit goes sideways, at least there's people there that could help, and there's horses that could get you back, and all this. But like then like when you're up bitch creek or whatever, and there's just two of you, it's like, man, if something went sideways right now, like you're really out there, and you're a little bit vulnerable. And I never felt scared or anything, but it's just a reality you kind of have in the back of your mind. um do you guys, like, does that concern ever go through your mind? And like, I know, like, so to bring it full circle, like the main topic on your guys' last podcast was the 5 things that you kind of require to have on you at any time you're out there. So I kind of like circling back to that, and would like to like briefly hear those answers again, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Jake, why don't you head at it?
Yeah, if I can remember what I said. I know my number one was lighters, and I said on the podcast I normally have 3 to 4 lighters on my person at all time. And I say on my person, I mean I have 2 on me, and I'll have 1 on my saddlebags, and then 1 in my day pack. Second was batteries with a headlight, or headlight with batteries, extra batteries. And Brandon said this too, I think, when he talked about headlamps, but he always takes at least 2, I believe. I think that's what he said. And I'm the same way. I have 1 on my person and 1 in my saddlebags. And my third was a rifle. I believe it was a rifle or a gun. I carry 45-70.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of blanking on the fourth. I know my fifth was a dog. And I think my fourth was rain gear. So sorry, I can't really exactly
Oh
remember,
no,
but
no, I think that was the general gist of it anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like I was surprised, honestly, to hear how unanimous it was across the board from you guys about the comfort of dogs. Oh shit, that just reminded me, when you guys were talking about the horses, I wanted to ask about this. Remind me to circle back what we're talking about right now. But like, what, so with horses, like if you tie them up and we're out hiking, hunting for 3-4 hours, and this horse is tied up in grizzly country, completely vulnerable, why don't grizzly bears fuck with horses? Do you guys know?
Yeah, I mean they're scared of the horses. I mean
Yeah.
and mules, like, I've seen them out in the pasture. What it's not pasture, it's a meadow in the Teton Wilderness, but we call it pasture. They'll chase them. I've ran, and these guys have too. I've ran in, come around a corner, and there's a bear 5 yards away from me, and they'll stand up and look at the horse, and they'll run off.
No
Um,
shit.
oh yeah, I mean, something you got to realize, like, these guys, and not just like, not you specifically. I mean, everybody that's listening, is these horses, like, there's no corral up there. There's nothing. We don't have hay. Like, we turn them loose, and they go out in the middle of the night, and they fend for themselves and eat grass and and survive. And they see bears every night. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. If you had one hungry enough, he might try it. I've
Mm-hmm.
never heard of a story in the backcountry where they're tied up, but I mean, that's like when we kill an elk. I mean, I'm sure you remember, Cory. Like, as soon as we got to your bull, I had the horses circled around me, because they're gonna let us know when the bear's coming in, and as soon as that bear sees them, most of the time they're gonna go the other way.
Yeah. I yeah, I didn't realize that until we were out there, and I was just like, the first day we tied him up and we started hiking to a different location or whatever, I was like, is the horse going to be all right? Like, we're in grizzly country. Like, I just thought like they're sitting duck at that point. Like, I didn't think a bear would ever be scared or intimidated of the horse, especially tied up, like once it realized that. But yeah, that was so surprising to me. I didn't know, like, even like, I don't know if it was the genetics or just historically, like where the fear comes from, because a grizzly could fuck up a horse, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jake, Jeremiah, do you guys got some insight on that?
Yeah, I think Brandon covered that pretty good. Like, I don't know. Even when they're tied up, I don't think it's ever crossed my mind. Like, and I'm gone for a whole day and don't see them. Like, unless they untie themselves and leave me, I've never thought about them getting killed or something happening to them from a bear.
That probably
Yeah.
worries me the most, as they untie themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think a little bit, and I mean, take this with a grain of salt, but I feel like a little bit of it, if not more than that, is bred into them. Because if you have a dog, like go back to dogs,
Yeah, true.
one of my dogs is, I mean, she probably weighs, I don't know, 25 pounds. She's an Idaho shag, maybe 30 pounds. But regardless of the dog size, if you have a dog that barks and is pretty vocal and a bear comes in, that bear is 99% probably going to haul ass away from that dog. And I feel like that's kind of the same with horses where they associate us with them
Yeah,
to a
true.
point. It probably sounds kind of corny, like, and I'm just kind of talking, but I feel like a little bit of that is it's a little bit bred into them because, I mean, obviously a bear can freaking wreck a dog's world. And if they cornered a bear, then he might, but generally they'll run away. And I feel like that's just kind of the same with horses where they might not, run away as they would with a dog, but when they see a horse, they're like, oh shit, there's someone else here. So, and
Yeah,
not all bears are like that, obviously, but I feel like that has a little bit to do with it.
that makes sense.
Well,
They're probably used to Native Americans slinging arrows off the horses.
well, and like most, like a good rule of thumb, most of the time, this is not all the time, but most of the time, the bears are more scared of you than you are of them. Like, they
Yeah.
don't want conflict most of the time. Like, they're going to try to avoid you. I mean, there's certain scenarios, like young cubs getting kicked off sows. They're hungry. They don't have their mom to get food for them. So they're probably a little bit bolder. Sows with cubs, they're going to protect their cubs. Old boars, for the most part, I kind of feel like, in my experience, like they just kind of roam around and leave you alone. They know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But like that, as far as and I'd be curious to see what Jake and Jeremiah say about this. But the things that worry about me the most are sows with cubs and a young bear that just got kicked off his mom because he's hungry. And I
Yeah.
don't know if that's true, but I mean, what do you think, Jake?
I think sows and cubs, they're, when you run into them, it's, for me anyways, I'm like, oh shit. Or if I see a sow tracks and a cub following around the trail, I'm a little more wide eyed, I guess, just looking around because I feel like, especially if you get one cornered or on accident, or if you surprise that you come over a hill and there's a cub there, something's probably going to happen. And luckily, I haven't necessarily had a super close encounter with sow and cubs, so I can't 100% say that, if something would happen. But from the stories I've heard and from what I've observed, just how they roll with their cubs, I would say to me that's what is probably the most dangerous aspect of hunting in grizzly bear country, or just bear country in general. And then young bears, like you said, they just got kicked off their mom. They are pretty bold, and I've ran into a couple of them. I don't know Jeremiah has, but they always kind of look at you and you're like, I don't know if I should be scared of this guy. And I've never had a young bear, I think anyways, really come at me or do anything, but they always just have that look in their eye like, well, I don't know. But so that's kind of scary to a point, I guess, but
Yeah,
just another reason to keep your eyes open.
it's a scary deal how, like, when you see a couple of videos or you learn about them, and it's like the amount of ground that they could cover, and at the size that they're at, it's like they are, I mean, you said it before, but like apex predator, just terrifying animals. And I don't think any people, like a lot of people, have like an understanding of just how strong and vicious they could be when that switch gets flipped. So it was a scary, like when my dad shot. Oh, do you remember, Brandon? My dad's gun didn't go off, like the firing pin froze up.
Oh yeah, yep.
And he's like, so I'm sitting behind him when Brandon's calling this bull in. I think like he started at like 1,000 yards, ended up as close as like 250. I think when it was just about ready to shoot. It was beautiful. Came in perfect. Like it was like just a beautiful setting, and he's just sitting patient, letting him come closer and closer and closer. And he goes to, I'm filming him with my like iPhone or whatever behind him, and he just turns around. He's like, "Give me your fucking gun." I'm like, "What?" He's like, he's like, my firing pin must have froze, won't shoot. So I hand him my gun. Like everything's all frantic, and he's being so goddamn loud, like just pissed off about his gun not operating correctly. Like, I'm like, you're gonna spook this elk so fast just because you're frustrated right now. I'm like, shut up. And he ended up killing it with my gun and everything, and it worked out. But then when we went down, we were like down, I don't know exactly where we were, Brandon. I think pretty close to like the Yellowstone line there. I think within like a couple miles, where my dad shot. I don't know if you remember, but
Yep.
and we're kind of like down in a hole a little bit, and just when we start quartering it up and everything, we just hear like the loudest crash. Like maybe it sounded like maybe 150 yards away up the hill. And I saw Brandon's eyes light up a little bit, and I'm like, oh shit, if he's nervous, like I better be nervous right now. So I'm just like standing on post, just watching while he's kind of quartering up the elk and everything. And that hearing that noise and like just knowing that for the bears, when they hear rifle shots, it might be like a dinner bell for them. It's a scary situation, and I was only in it once or twice there. You guys are in it quite a bit more than me, so I'll give you credit there again. But goddamn, that's it gets your heart going, that's for sure.
I can't remember if it was Jake or Jeremiah on maybe the last episode or 2 episodes ago, is how big they are and how quiet they can move through the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's crazy, really. I mean, you can, and I'm a kind of off topic, but I'm a very deep sleeper. So, especially if I'm by myself, or which in Miami that ain't too often, I guess. But really in Alaska, if I'm sleeping up by myself, and we use these little solo tents, so it's just basically a mummy bag with sides on it. It's pretty much what you're sleeping in, but
you're a burrito.
basically, yeah, you're wrapped up and you're in your mummy bag too. So if you have to get out quick, good luck.
Yep.
But yeah, they're so dang quiet. And just like a side story here, talking about grizzly bears being quiet. But I was with a hunter in Alaska, and we camped. It was late at night, and we had to cross the river, and we were super cold when we crossed. And anyways, we threw camp up on the riverbank, which normally you don't ever do. But we had some sheep that we were looking at a couple hours earlier, and they were only about 1,000 yards away. And it was just getting dark out. It was probably midnight, and there's only like 2 hours of darkness that time of year. But anyways, we threw camp up on the riverbank, basically in the willows. I mean, it wasn't super thick, but thick enough to make you not want to camp there. But we didn't really have a choice. And kind of backstory, I guess, generally anywhere with bears, you don't, or I don't, camp in the river bottom, especially with willows, because generally that's where the bears travel through. You know, not all the times, but we cut a lot of bear trails anyways. We throw our tents up, and the tents were 5 feet apart probably. And our guide strings for our tents were crossing each other. And I had my food in my vestibule, and there was I had a food bag basically, and half the bag, I guess, was sticking out of the vestibule. And a lot of guys don't sleep with their food. That's a different deal. But anyways, I do, because I don't want my food to get taken. But anyways, we got up the next morning, and my hunter, he opened the tent before I did, and I was putting my boots on, and my hunter was like, "Hey, did you trip over the guide strings last night?" And I was like, "No." Anyways, we both got up and went outside, and the freaking grizzly bear walked right between our two tents, tore up our guide strings, and didn't touch the food bag, which when I say food, it's just freeze-dried food. It's all sealed.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't touch that, but walked all around our tents and tore up the ground, which was just tundra, and left
Nope.
at some point. And we did not hear that son of a bitch at all. And when I woke up and I saw that, I was like, oh, should be a little more vigilant, I guess. But it's
That-
probably not a great, like, that's your guide story. But anyways, just a side story and how quiet they can be. And like I said, I'm a deep sleeper, but he was with me and he didn't hear me either. So
you're gonna have guys lining up to come hunt with you.
yeah, exactly. Just let it develop, dude. If
Dude,
he comes in your tent, then do something about it. If not, just go to bed.
that is flirting with disaster, man. We that just reminded me. Could you shoot, could you guys hear me okay? I just had it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. When we were kind of talking with Brandon and Lynn before we were coming out. I don't know how or why. Because I think so we were all gonna bring pistols out or whatever just to have as like a side carry. Because I think that was the year there was like 2 guys killed like within the month before like the September we were coming out or whatever, I think maybe one guy was hunting and one guy was hiking or something. And like back in 2019. So like I don't know if they were always carrying pistols before when they had come out. But this time we were deciding that we were going to bring them just to have them just in case, whatever. And I forget who asked it or how it got brought up, but somebody mentioned like a 9mm or something like that. And somebody was like, yeah, that'll be good. Just bring 2 bullets. That's all you'll need. And I go, what do you mean 2 bullets? He's like, well, one you could shoot at the bear and piss it off, and then the other one you could just shoot yourself in the head because that ain't gonna do the goddamn thing. So within the last like 3 weeks there before we left, we all went out and got 10mm.
My favorite line, another one of my favorite lines, if someone has like a 357. Actually, I can't take credit. This is my grandpa's line, but like, you know why you file the sights off a 357, right? So it doesn't hurt as bad when that bear shoves it up your ass.
Yeah, you don't want to be carrying the wrong thing out there. And that's even like I went out back to the Tetons after the hunt with like 2 of my friends, and we were just doing some hiking and stuff. And everybody was saying like bring bear spray, and like for whatever reason I didn't. And lo and behold, we were like hugging a riverbed, hiking back. We're like probably 30 minutes from the car, like not far, on like maybe a 5 or 6 hour hike. And we round a corner, and right on the riverbed, a bear just turns around. Grizzly looks up at us, goes right up on its hind legs immediately. I'm like, oh fuck, this is the way I'm going right now. And it was luckily we got out, and we were within probably 25 yards of it, something like that, like pretty close. And my buddy had his like Apple Watch on or whatever, so it's like tracking steps and miles and all that shit. And he's like, it just gave me an alert. Like once we got back to the car, he's like, it just gave me an alert. He's like, my heart rate was up over like 195 or something like that. I'm like, I don't know what's normal, but that sounds high.
Yeah.
That's better than going out in a nursing home, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'd rather go out that way, just not yet.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
No, very true. Circling back to the top 5 things, and I'm sure Jeremiah's got some. So I think one thing that like I touched base on, I think that's super good to have these days, especially like in mine and your situation, Cory. Like say I got hurt and we didn't know what to do. Like I didn't have an inReach at that point.
Mm-hmm.
When you were up there, and I think an inReach is a good thing to have with you in the backcountry, especially, you know, and not in the backcountry. I mean, you could be out of service in your vehicle and you could be in a blizzard or whatever, and your cell phone is not working, and you're, you know, say you don't have satellite texting or your satellite texting isn't working, you can use your inReach to get a hold of someone. And I don't know if that'd be my number one. I'm partial to, like Jake said, my gun, my horse, my dogs. Like I got a dog smaller than Jake's dog he's talking about. And I know that, honestly, and this might sound cruel and some people might hate this, but if it's me or the bear, I know she's going to give me enough time. Actually, all my dogs, they're going to give me enough time to get away. And they might die, but they will die for me.
Yeah.
And so I would probably pick my gun or dog. I know I'm being biased here, maybe a hypocrite here, but I'd pick my dog, gun, and horse first. But the inReach, like overall, not just being a guide or hunting, I think an inReach is a good thing for everybody to have.
Yeah, I think so too. And like that's the other thing. It's like the perfect, just like leveraging new technology that like, hey, like, you know, we part of the whole experience out there, at least for me, and I know like the guys I was with, just not having any service, nobody's using their cell phones. I was the only one using shit because like I like taking pictures and videos and everything. So like I was probably on my phone and with my camera more than anybody, which I'm like so grateful I did, because like those are like some of my favorite pictures and videos I've ever taken. But like outside of that, like there is no cell phone, there's no scrolling, there's no texting anybody. Like you're just there with who you're there with, and that made the experience so much better. Like it's hard to get that disconnect anymore. Like everybody's distracted by so many different things, and I'm definitely guilty of it. But like to just be out there for 10 days, like truly in the wilderness and nowhere else, it was awesome. So like the inReach is just like the perfect balance of like, man, if shit really goes sideways, you got something. But you know, you're not texting on it and shit.
Yeah. Then I guess back to the top 5 again. I think my top one was a lighter and fire starter, because fire starter to me, I mean, the conditions can be as shitty as they can be, and you're gonna, especially if you need to start a fire, you can get it going.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you might not always have dry pine needles or dry wood to get stuff going with, where if you got some fire starter with you, you can get that wet wood going. And then I don't think on our podcast, I for some reason couldn't think of my last one, but I would have to go with an inReach. Now that we've talked about it, after Brandon said that, I was like, yeah, that's something I always have on me, no matter if I'm going 5 minutes from camp or 2 hours or whatever. It's always on me.
Yeah, no, for sure. I like to throw in baby wipes in there too. That's I might be what's the new term? I might be gluten intolerant, I guess. I don't know, but I need baby wipes.
Yeah, you got to stay mobile.
And then another, I can't remember if it was my third one. I think my second one was my pistol. I make sure I always have that on me. But I believe my third one was a medic kit.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I make sure, I mean, at least when I have clients with me, I make sure I have one with me. Like riding down the trail by myself or whatever, for some reason I don't have one on me, but there is always a medic kit in my pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good call.
What quick question for Jake Jeremiah, and I don't want to get too deep in this because this could maybe go either way for different types of people, but like what firearm, like if you had to run out of the tent, what are you, and there might be a situation with a bear, you're going to an elk, like what firearm are you going to grab?
I was just about to ask this.
I mean, I carry a 10 millimeter, and that comes with me to our wall tent, like where we're sleeping and stuff. For some reason, during rifle season, I always leave my rifle up in the tack tent. But I always like my 10 mil is always with me. It's right beside me, and that's going to be the first thing I grab. But
yeah,
Jake's is
same.
probably different.
Well, it's close to the same. I always have my 10 millimeter with me, but for instance, in the summertime, I also carry a 45-70, and it's always right by me when I'm sleeping, especially. So that's what I would grab. And in the fall time, which is kind of sounds dumb, but in the archery, like during archery hunts, I have my 45-70, and like I said, that stays with me at all times. So I'll grab that coming out of the tent, and then during rifle, I pack up my own rifle, which is a 338 Lapua, and it's kind of long and heavy and all that, but if I had to run out of the tent, that's probably what I'd grab. And in Alaska, that's what I carry as well for a backup gun. So first thing, I'd probably grab that, but I also always have my 10 millimeter on me, so I'm not exactly sure what I'd grab in Alaska, but I'll grab something for sure.
Brandon, what do you carry?
I have my 45 with me at all times, but like if I had to run out of the tent or something, like you can't go wrong with the 45-70. That's what Kendra packs, and we kind of share it. But I'd have to say it's my shotgun.
Yeah.
I would grab that first, just because you can go buckshot and then slug, buckshot and slug, and you don't know what situation you're going to be in. But just let's say it's with a bear, like the buckshot, you're not going to miss. Well, I mean, unless you're aiming south and he's coming north, but that's a bad situation. So, mine would be the shotgun.
Yeah, can't go wrong there. Wouldn't be a bad option. You just brought up Kendra. I feel like we got to talk about Kendra for a second, because at least from my perspective, she is like one of the most unique females in a very good way that I've ever met. Let's how do you guys meet, Brandon?
Well, I met her actually at our hunting camp. She was working for the Forest Service, clearing trail. She has trail crew. If you ask Lynn Madsen, my grandpa, or Jake Clark, it was arranged marriage by those two. I beg to differ. But yeah, I met her up there. She was clearing trail. She just wanted to be in the mountains. And that was the easiest way to make money too and have a living, is being in the mountains, working for the Forest Service, other than an outfitter. But like, I get, for girls, it is hard, like, for them to get hired on with an outfitter. Like, and I get their reasoning. Like, I'm an outfitter, and I would be a hypocrite to say that I'm not the same way, because it's completely different. Like, if you have to load 10 mules with grain on, that's 20 bags of grain, 80 pounds. Like, not everybody's cut out for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd have to say that, like, girls that can do it, it's like Jake's wife, Whitney. She's more than capable. There's a handful of girls that I can name off the top of my head, including Kendra. And so I met her out there, and I just like, holy crap, that's pretty neat. A girl's out there. She was in charge too of like 3 other dudes, and they were not ideal being the, like, yeah, I shouldn't even say that, but yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty shy, and awkward. But yeah, that's where I met her at, and then I may or may not have hired her to come work for my grandpa and uncle without them knowing. And yeah, the rest is history.
You got to get your in where you get it. It's funny you say you're shy, because so once we set up and like we knew we were doing this podcast, I reach out to my dad and my buddy Mark, who you met as well, just to see like, hey, if you guys have any like good questions or topics and shit that we could talk about, like fire them over. And Mark said, he's like, the first thing he said, he remembers Lynn telling us a story when he had to invite Kendra over for dinner when she was still working with the Forest Service, because you were too shy, so he had to like force your hand a little bit just to speak up and get her at the dinner table.
I just will admit it. Finally, I've denied it for 7 years now, but yeah, yep, that is true. He had to kind of push me forward. I remember when I told my mom, I was like, "Yeah, I met this girl in the backcountry. We're going on a date," and she's like, "In the wilderness?" I'm like, "Yeah," and like, they're not. It's funny. You think growing up with an outfitter, they're not quite like Kendra. Don't get me wrong; they like the backcountry, and I'm gonna get some slack over this if they hear this. And I love them to death, but she was like, "Does she have all her teeth?" I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, she has all her teeth." But yeah, so no, that's where I met Kendra, and it's funny. Jake met his wife. Well, I probably should let Jake say it, but yeah, it's pretty cool how people can have the same interest, and it's just weird where you'll meet your significant other when the time comes.
Yeah, 100%. Let's hear it, Jake.
Well, shoot, Jimmy, my boss for Lost Creek Outfitters, he hired Whitney, which is my current wife. Anyways.
That's a hell of a way to put it. You better make sure she doesn't hear this.
No, she'd be laughing. No, she's my wife, and I love her to death. But anyways, Jimmy hired her, and I got back from Alaska, and Jimmy was like, "Yeah, I hired a new girl to camp Jack, or to pack, whatever it was. I think it was pack." And I was kind of typical, like Brandon was saying. I was like, "Oh, great, here we go." And then to top it off, my boss was like, "Yeah, she's bringing her Mustang with her." And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" Like, we got to deal with a damn Mustang in camp and yada yada. But yeah, long story short, we hit it off pretty good. And I would say I was pretty similar to Brandon. I think I was pretty shy, but I was also kind of trying at the same time, but I wasn't trying to make it obvious.
Slow
but
play,
yeah, we hit it off pretty good, and shoot, we got married not long after that, and yeah,
that's
been
cool,
happily married ever since, I think. Anyways, so
it's a good way to speed up the dating process. Meeting girls out there doing that stuff. It's like, all right, you get a real feel for who somebody is real quick out there.
Well, it's cool for me, and I'll make this. Sorry, Brandon. I'll make this short, but when you're working with somebody, especially in the backcountry like that, you figure out real quick who they are as a person and their work ethic and just everything that's genuine about them. So you skip the whole dating bullshit process, I think, and she'll say the same thing. When you're working with somebody in that part of the industry, you're by yourselves most of the time, or whatnot, or you're with them, so you figure out real quick what kind of person they are and their work ethic, like I said. So that was just a shortcut. It cut the dating process down, I think. But
yeah, no doubt, I bet.
I'll agree with what Jake said there. Like, working together with each other, especially back there in the backcountry, there's so many. You got No, you got to use so much of your common sense, and like it'll bring out the worst in everybody. Like, why don't if something goes wrong, it'll bring out the worst in your coworkers, your hunters, your significant other, in me and Jake's case. And I always say, like, if you can work together and figure out that and living with each other 24/7 while working alongside each other 24/7, then it's probably going to be all right. Because there's a lot of times that me and Kendra are mad. We're not mad at each other, and people will think that. Like, we're just mad at the situation that's happening right now, and knowing that most of the time you could have prevented it, and that, I guess what I'm getting at is, like, it definitely brings your relationship to a whole nother level. Like, you're just not, it's weird. I don't know how to describe it, really.
No, I think that's definitely a thing. Like, even not to equate it back because it's not the same, but like even growing up, like playing sports, whether it was like wrestling or football, whatever it is, which I'm sure you guys could relate to, or like when you go through like the suck, if you will, for lack of a better term, with somebody, and like you come out the other end, you do form like this different level of relationship. Because like I always kind of described this trip, again, like I've only been on it one time, you guys live it, so it's different, but like it was like type 2 fun or whatever, which is like broadly defined as like not always super fun in the moment, but then like looking back, it's like that was the coolest experience of my life. And I only say that because like the first 2 days, like the weather was just shitty. Talking about
Oh,
gear and everything, like I just didn't have the right rain shit. So it was like 38 degrees, pissing down rain, and I'm just saturated. My boots are soaked. Like I just didn't have the right shit. And I'll never make that mistake again. So that's on my top 5. But I think, yeah, like going through days like that, and obviously you guys have even more struggles like when you're actually running the outfit or working there like full time and stuff. I think, yeah, you do get a real feel for somebody, because like you could sit there and bitch and moan about the problems that are going on, or you could just put your head down and work through them and keep going. And I'm sure like your wives are, those types of people. So yeah, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Like I'm saying, like there's different ways to be admirable stand-up people, especially females, but like I've never seen females work like that. And like what I saw in Kendra. So it was just fucking badass, honestly.
yeah, no, for sure. And like there's a couple like subjects I want to talk about there. Like, I think so. I can't remember who brought it up, but a couple episodes ago or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like in our industry, like I remember I rode out of Hawks Rest and it was 30 below one day. Like we were packing out a hunting camp. The Hawks Rest bridge was down. The river is frozen. We rode 52 animals across the river on top of the ice because that was our only option.
Mm-hmm.
And you just prayed to God the ice didn't break. And I remember telling everybody, I'm like, if your horse goes in the water, do not fall off because it's 30 below and you will, worst case scenario, die. You're going to get hypothermia. And I remember that day we got there. It was a miserable day. Freaking cold the whole time. We got there. Water was froze up for the stock. Everything was froze. Couldn't get the packs undone. Everything. And you're thinking, oh, why do I do this? Like seriously, like this sucks. But then the next day, I'm like, I'm ready to go again. Like that wasn't that bad. I always like off hangover like with chow. But did you die? But yeah, no. And then the other thing is with the girls, like I guess this is a little bit to the girls too. Like if you're looking into this industry, like give it a shot. It's not for everybody, but you can't. Like you won't know until you try, and just keep. And I'm not gonna lie, there's 90% of the people are gonna cut you down, especially in this industry. Like they're gonna be like, nope, you can't do it. But if you can work hard and compete with everybody, like you're gonna be just fine. Like McKinley, she works for me. Same thing. She's tough. Like I don't ever have to worry, and I just got to say, like, just keep going at it if you're a girl and trying to get in this industry. And like I said, it's not cut out for everybody. So I'm not trying to tell every girl that might listen to this, like, you're going to succeed. And every guy, too.
Yeah.
There's been lots of guys in the first 4 hours of meeting. I'm like, oh, man, you're not going to make this. And how do you tell them, like, hey, dude, we're early enough on. Like, I would suggest finding something else because you're gonna hate it and you're not gonna make it. So I'm not like just singling out girls here because trust me, there's plenty of dudes that I've seen come and go that I'm like,
Oh,
you
dude,
don't know what you're signing up for.
I feel like 95% of dudes aren't cut out for it. So it's like you guys are truly rare breed. And like Brandon, when we were friggin' going up, all I was thinking about, I was like, I remember saying like, you didn't say you were an all-state wrestler. Somebody else did in camp or whatever. And we're going up Bitch Creek, and it was like the part where we had like the trail got pretty skinny, so we had to hop off the horses and kind of run up that little part. And I'm like, for like whatever, like I'm in shape. I'm not like the fat, out of shape, disgusting guy or whatever. And like the way you went up that friggin' mountain, I'm like, this guy's like a little fucking mountain goat. I'm like, how the fuck did he just go up that so easily? I'm back here like huffing and puffing, like losing my footing left and right. I'm like, dude, so what you
I
guys
will say,
do is exceptional.
when horses are about ready to run you over, or mules, and you're scrambling up something, it gives you a pretty damn good incentive to get up the mountain.
A literal kick in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, Jake, Jeremiah will all contest. Like, you've been somewhere where you're scrambling, you're like, I gotta get my ass in gear, or else I'm gonna get stepped on.
Some of them scenarios, that's probably the fastest I've ever ran in my life, just so I don't get stepped on.
Yeah, and like, he's getting way too. I'm not a fast runner. Like, I'm just a scrambler. Like, that's me getting the hell out of the way.
You were down on all fours. You were like moving like a bear, but it was like you were bear crawling, but it was at like grizzly speed. It wasn't like I was like a little cub back there, just freaking crawling.
I'm just glad you didn't see me up there bent over, almost puking. I'm trying to catch my breath. My coffee that I've been drinking the whole way up, I was like, oh no, it's gonna taste real good coming out here in a second.
Oh man.
You're a newlywed. How's that?
It's been good. No complaints here. All good. Yeah, we got married last March, and we did a destination wedding down in Mexico. So it was cool. Like we got all of our family and like tons of our friends, like way more than we were even expecting to come. We ended up with like 70 people down in Cancun for the week. So it was wild to say the least.
I bet that was pretty wild.
It was a good one for sure. Yeah, it's been good. We're coming up on a year already. It was quick.
You haven't slept on the couch
Awesome.
too?
No, I didn't get kicked to the couch yet, but I wouldn't rule it out either. I think she took a liking to the dog, so he could probably take my spot pretty quickly in that bed.
Oh yeah.
Well, cool, man. I unless like you guys have anything else, this was awesome. I feel like honestly I could probably go for like another 2 hours just picking your guys' brain. Oh, shoot. Actually, I do want to pick your brain a little bit more. Let's get in the gear locker a little bit. You guys kind of touched on some of the stuff like tying back to like the 5 things that you have on you at all times. Like what's some of the best because like obviously you guys are putting it through the ringer, like putting equipment through the ringer harder than anybody else. What's some of the stuff that you like? Like, are you buying Sitka shit, First Lite, KUIU, rain gear? Like, what are your go-tos in those departments?
I think what pod or what episode was that we
haven't released it
we
yet.
haven't released it yet. But for the most part, we try a little bit of everything. Like we have our favorites of Sitka, KUIU, Filson. I mean, First Lite. We've tried about everything, and we got our favorites from one brand and our favorite from the next. Like me personally, I have a, I don't even know what you want to call it. I wear Sitka, KUIU, First Lite, Canada. I have a little bit of everything on me.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends what you really want or fits you best or what you like best. But
I think it depends on the type of year too.
Yeah.
Or what season you're in. Like what Jake wear, and Jake's will tell you this, and Jeremiah, like what I wear during the archery hunt is completely different what I'll wear at the end of October and November. I mean, completely different. So I don't know. I like Jake said or Jeremiah said, we will, and it's weird too. We'll find something that we like and we'll stick to it. And
Mhm.
I remember I had a hunter ask me, he's like, "Who do you represent? Filson, Sitka, KUIU, KUIU?" I'm like, all of them. All of them, whichever
All
one
the
works
above.
best.
Just waiting on that paycheck from them as the ambassador, huh?
Yeah. I don't know. What do you have on that, Jake?
Yeah, I agree with y'all. I have a little bit of everything, really. I mean, I feel like if something new comes out and I see other people wearing it and they have something good to say about it, and I have the gumption to try it, I'll probably try it. But yeah, shoot, I got KUIU, Sitka, Filson, Helly Hansen. I mean, a little bit of everything. And I think it, like, or, sorry, like, about anything, it's probably personal preference on what you wear. Because I've seen some guides that are strictly KUIU or strictly Sitka or First Lite, whatnot. But at the same time, for me, I'm just kind of like whatever works. And I will say Helly Hansen, for me anyways, has been the best for rain gear. And that's a big opinion because it's pretty heavy. But yeah, I'm basically same as Jeremiah and Brandon on that aspect. So
One
Yeah.
thing I don't want anybody to forget about is if you guys come from one thing everybody needs to remember, way down the line, someone in your family was a hunter. I like that scenario. Like, at one point, you go back far enough in your family tree, they hunted to survive. There was no grocery store. There was no Maverick or Sinclair, whatever convenience store there is. Like, they were hunter-gatherers at one point in your family tree.
oh yeah,
And so if you look back at, like, specifically, I'm thinking the picture of you and your dad, or your dad and Grizz. Man, that was in the 90s when they went hunting when they killed that bull, and he was a stud bull. You know what your dad was wearing? It was a red plaid wool coat.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people get into this. If you're, say, someone that can't spend that much money or not in the boat to spend that much money to get like the top name brand, whatever came out first, is for a couple hundred years, no one had camo. And so, whatever works and whatever in your budget, whether it's wool, whatever. And if it works, and that's what we use for, forever. We didn't have Sitka or KUIU or First Lite, so I just would like to remind people, like, don't forget that worked before we start having all this stuff.
Yeah.
basically where he came from. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt. And it ain't gonna get you a bigger bull just because you got $3,000 worth of Sitka on
Yeah.
them either. I think
No.
there's a time and place for everything. It's like, yeah, like I agree with you guys. I think even like back here chatting with my buddies, it's a lot of the same conversations. Like Sitka has some good stuff. Like we're primarily doing whitetail hunting out here, so it's like, like there's some niceties for when you're just in a tree stand for 8 hours all day. Sitka has something good for that, or First Light might have something good for base layers or whatever it is. I think, that, yeah, everybody's kind of got their own little thing that it is probably just personal preference. The only thing I care about, as I mentioned before, is I got to get the right rain gear. Dude, that first day I was freezing. I was like, I didn't say boo because I'm like, I'm not going to be the one bitching in the first day. And it's nobody's fault. You're just stuck in the rain and I don't have the right shit on. But I was like, friggin' like my teeth are chattering and everything. I'm freezing my ass off. And then like I got back to camp and I turned my boot upside down. It just like poured out like 3 inches worth of rain, and then put them next to the fire all night just to try and dry them out because I didn't have a second pair like an idiot, and like burnt the sole, so like that's all out of whack. Then I was a mess, man. So sometimes having the right gear, that's probably the only thing that really matters. It's like if you're going to take advantage of the modern luxuries, rain gear would be a good place to spend it.
I'd like to add a pair of boots too.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
I think a pair of boots and your rain gear are probably, in my opinion at least, the top two. Like, if you're gonna spend some money, spend it on them too, and like make sure they're good. Like,
I'd like to add a third: optics.
that
A
too.
scope on there. Like my grandpa,
Yeah.
and this will be on the next podcast. And one thing that's interesting is rain gear has been brought up on like every
I
podcast
think
that we
so,
talk
yeah.
about, is like how important rain gear is, and like optics. If you're someone that's going, not even on elk hunt in Wyoming, but if you're going somewhere and you're spending some money, even back home and you're regular, like optics at low light can define that hunt of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're going on a hunt and any money you're putting into it, optics will change the game, especially in low light.
Yeah, you get the extra half hour on the front end and the back end, and sometimes that's when the most activity is. You wanna see what's out there then, and yeah, I'm with that. I nutted up and spent some jingle on new after the trip because it's like good eye opener. Like I needed good binoculars, good scope. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
No, for sure. One thing we do, Cory, to end our podcast is we do a Wild Westie. And I think that it's cool. Like, and I want to hear your Wild Westie too. We tell a story from good, bad, wreck, whatever it is, a story that listeners might like or sticks out in your mind. The one with Owen will be a very, when you guys listen to that podcast, that Wild Westie is a wild.
You'll be looking forward to it.
I think it'll be episode 4. That Wild Westie. He asked me if he could say a bad one, and I'm like, I was like, yeah, I don't care. And that was not what I expected for a bad one. So, why don't you go, Cory? Like, I just think that's cool. Like, we can sit here and BS and hear stories. Like, that's what everybody wants to hear is some cool stories.
All right, I got just because this one sticks out in my mind. We were just talking about Cancun, so I was down there on we went for like spring break my senior year of college. I had like no money. I have no idea how I even made it down there, but like there was like 40 of us. It was like 20 girls, 20 guys, all from my college, and it was like we were up until like 5 a.m. every single night, like partying our ass off, like everything you would imagine spring break in Cancun was. It was, and I think it was like the last night we got back from the bar, and everybody was kind of going to bed. Like there was a few stragglers up. It was like 4 a.m, something like that, and we had like a good relationship like with the girls that went down. Like they were all just like good time girls. Like nobody was really dating or anything. Like we were all just friends, like having a good time together, whatever. It's all good. So like me and my roommates busted into their room, like our 4 like closest girlfriends, and we're like trying to like rile them up, and we're like, we're going skinny dipping in the ocean, like, are you coming, all this stuff. And we said something to get them over the edge, and they ended up coming down. And so like we're all fired up, like it's like our last night in Cancun, we're gonna go skinny dipping, blah blah, all this shit. And so we're all like, I don't know, maybe 30 feet away from the ocean. We start dropping our drawers and everything. We're all wound up. I mean, we're hammered drunk at this point too. And 4 of us or 5 of us start running into the ocean, and like kind of look back and no girls to be found. They stayed back and grabbed all of our clothes and took off back to their room. So now we're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf, wherever the frig we were, butt naked, 5 guys just dick in hand, kind of up Schitt's Creek a little bit, and lo and behold, not 10 seconds later, 3 cops come strolling down the beach with AK-47s, like full military garb, like helmets, everything. Fucking drag us out of the ocean, sit us on, like, you know how like the ocean like makes a little berm every once in a while, like maybe like 10 feet from where the tide is, where it like drops off, like it's just enough like you could sit on. So they sit us down, and like the 2 cops have like their hands on our shoulders, and then like 2 of us are in the middle. And again, like really really drunk, not smart at all with Mexican police. The 2 of us without the hands on our shoulders just take off and start booking it, and we're just like, just get up and run, just get up and run. So we all take off butt ass naked. So now like we're running back through the whole resort with, again, like our dick in our hand, just like friggin' letting it flop around all over the place, like hauling ass away from these cops. We finally make it into the lobby. There's like people now from the lobby chasing us. These cops are chasing us, and we go running back up stores, and we're banging on the doors. And like the girls' room, like they think we're just like pissed off or like trying to get our clothes back, whatever. We're like, let us in, because like we don't have our key cards now to get back into our room or anything. So like, let us in. Like the cops are chasing us, all this shit, and like they drag. I think like 3 of us into the room. We get our clothes back on. My one buddy ended up getting caught, and he's like the biggest shithead of the bunch. Like it was, of course, him who got caught, and they ended up just like hustling him for like $300 and let him go. But it was a wild last night in Cancun, to say the least.
That's awesome.
It was a good one.
Oh, that's great.
Jake, what's your Wild Westie?
What? Are we only supposed to give one per podcast?
Oh, we are, but
Nah, come on, I gotta hear something from you guys.
Oh shit, I was not prepared.
It's hard. It's hard to come up with them on the spot, especially if you just gave one.
Well, I could say I already said my Wild Westie with the grizzly bear coming between my tent and my hunter's tent. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was a
I don't
good
know
one.
if that counts.
Okay, well, if I'm gonna say one, you gotta give me like at least 10 seconds, because
Like, you want a hunting story or
anything? It could be. And
I wasn't a real wild person when I was younger. Well, not I am young yet, but
I got one. But Jeremiah's in it, and he's not necessarily the main character in this. I mean, he is, because if he wasn't there, it would not have been as funny. And I'm gonna tell it from my point of view in case he ever wants to tell it. He can tell it from his point of view. But I believe it would have been 2 summers ago. We were on a pack trip. We were working for Brandon at the time.
Oh no!
And it's kind of a long story, but I'm gonna make it short. Maybe another time I'll go into detail about it, or Jeremiah can when he tells it. But anyways, we were coming down the North Fork of the Yellowstone, I believe. Yeah. And the trail was pretty shitty. It had kind of been a long day. We weren't far from our camp. Anyways, there was one stretch of timber we had to go through, and it was, I don't know, probably 500 yards, maybe 800 yards long. So it wasn't much. And literally on the other side of the stretch of timber was our camp. And it was kind of getting late, and the guests were like, where's camp at? And, we were like, oh, it's right up here. Anyways, we hit this stretch of timber, and the trail, I don't know necessarily how to describe it, but it's kind of narrow and it's steep on the downhill side. And it's not super steep on the uphill side, but there's a lot of timber in there, and the timber that is in there's some big ass trees. I mean, pretty damn, like I'm got some pretty long arms, and I couldn't wrap my hands around some of the trees. But anyways, we get through there, and the freaking trail is just, there's blow over everywhere. And we got probably 25 head or 26 head up between riding mules and pack mules, and a couple horses between all of us. And anyways, we're going through, and shit's just, we're bailing over logs. And it's one of those deals where it's end of the day, the camp's right there. All you care about is getting there. You don't necessarily care about clearing it, because we couldn't clear it at the time. We had some hand saws, but none of them were big enough to get through the trees that we had to go cross over. So we're going up, down, back, whatever. And me and Jeremiah and Whitney both have, I think, 6 head of pack mules. We're leading, and we're trying not to get too spread out, but you got to keep going when you got a pack string, because you can't necessarily stop when you don't have a place to stop. And anyways, we made it through 3/4 of it without having to wreck somehow. And our pack mules, they're just bailing over shit. And it's kind of, like I said, at the point, you don't really care how you get there as long as you get there. And really, if we would have been smart, we probably would have broke down some of our strings and led them to camp. But anyways, we get to a certain point, and we're only probably 200 yards away from camp. Jeremiah's in the back, and I'm sitting there. I came through a bad part of downfall, and the guests are between me and Whitney. So the guests all get there, and they're doing great. Whitney comes up behind the guests, and we have a stretch of probably 50 yards where we stop, and I'm looking for Jeremiah, and I don't see anything, don't hear anything. And I think I start yelling, I'm like, hey, Jeremiah, you okay? And nothing. And it was a good spot to rest for a minute, but it wasn't a great spot to tie up to, or tie up your stock in, the trees, whatnot. Anyways, after about 2 minutes, I look back and here comes a freaking bell mare, and she's by herself. What she was in, the bell mare was getting packed. I believe Jeremiah was leading her. So behind the bell mare should be 5 other mules. Well, she was coming up by herself.
Can I cut in?
And
She
yeah.
was on the way back.
Oh, okay, way back.
I should have been leading her.
Okay, sorry. She was on the way back. So she should have 5 mules in front of her. So she should not be in the lead of anything. Anyways, I see her come up and I'm like, "Oh shit. That's not good." So I can't remember what I do, if I tie my string up or if I give it to Whitney, whatever. Basically, I scurry and just start hauling ass back towards where she came from, and I'm yelling like, "Jeremiah, Jeremiah." And anyways, I get about 30 yards, maybe 40 yards from him, and I can't see him or anything because it's so damn thick. I'm like, "Jeremiah, you okay?" And all I hear is a "fuck no, I'm not okay. Where are you at? I need some help." And I'm like, "Oh shit." And anyways, I run up the trail towards his voice, and I come up to the trail, or to where he's at, and he's sitting on the ground, got blood all over his face. There's a freaking pack mule upside down, like 4 legs in the air. I'm like, "Damn, you're in quite a predicament." And she's wedged between basically the ground and probably a 5 foot in diameter log. And she's a smaller pack mule, and she's got her packs on, of course. Anyways, long story short, we get the mule up, and she's fine. And Jeremiah's got blood all over his face, and his hat's like 10 foot behind him when I get to him. I'm like, geez. And yeah, then he tells me his end of the story, but that was my point of view from it. And it's a pretty good story. I probably won't ever forget it.
Oh yeah, that was
Pretty
a good.
funny,
Yeah, that was
pretty
a good one.
comical. Yeah.
You know, Jake, that was going to be my Wild Westie there.
Well, you could tell it from your point of view, though, because I
Well,
just told it from mine. That's what, because I kind of figured that would be yours, but I didn't know what else to tell.
I like those stories when shit went wrong, there's blood, and at the end of the day, or like however many years later, 2 years later, you can laugh about it because no one died.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
At that, like, thinking of it now, I should have just stopped and took a picture of what the hell was going on, just to have, like, as a memory. Because sometimes, you know, it's better to show someone what was going on than besides just tell them. But
Yeah.
Yeah, we
So,
would have
what's
been
your
able
point of
to.
view from the story? If that
what's
was
my
gonna be your Wild Westie,
well, it was a long day to start out with because where'd we leave from? Was it the Soda Fork?
I don't.
And then we dropped all the way into the, was it the North Fork of the Yellowstone?
Yeah.
But it'd been a long day, and shoot, I mean, kind of Jake summed the beginning up. But the the bell mare that I had, I don't even think she was packed. We had her empty because, you know, we didn't quite trust her, to be honest. But the mule in front of her, she always liked to jump logs. I don't know if it was just because she was a little bit smaller and had to jump to get over them, but anytime, so that comes down to my fault, could have been prevented. Uh, I probably should have rearranged my string a little bit. Uh, but she jumped the log and that bell mare set back, and there was a little pine tree, probably 3 inches in diameter, and there was a little hook like pointing down to the ground that caught the lead rope on the bell mare. And I didn't know that at the time. And usually them small trees you can kind of just pull the whole string forward and they kind of just blow over the little tree. Well, she wasn't coming and I kept trying and trying, and pretty soon my string is like an accordion. They're just going back and forth, back and forth. Terrible spot to be doing that at. And I realize that it's not coming undone. And so I get off, and well, before I get off, the bell mare kind of like wraps around and she's on the downhill side now, and shit's going everywhere. They're pulling and she's not going anywhere. So I jump off, break my string down. So now it's just the little mule and the bell mare tied together. And I'm like, well, I guess I got to cut the rope to do this. And pretty soon the little mule, she falls down. The bell mare, she decides to lay on top of that one. I'm like, holy shit. And mind you, Jake and Whitney are not to be seen. And I was yelling for help.
Hey, disclaimer. When you're in shit spots like that, you can't necessarily stop and make sure everybody gets through. You got to keep going and get to a good place to stop, because if you don't, it'll be a shit show.
No, I 100% agree, but I was yelling
I
for
was just
help.
giving
You're like that little kid that had a nightmare, and you're looking for your mom or dad's bedroom with a pillow underneath his arm. You're like, help.
So I go and start cutting the rope, and I can't remember if the ring, because she had like a flat halter on her with a ring. It wasn't just like a rope halter. I went to cut the rope, and I think that ring broke, and that tree came back and smacked me in the head, and my hat went flying back 10 feet, like Jake said, and pretty soon that bell mare, she's rolling down the mountain, and I'm just sitting there while the other one's upside down against the log. I'm watching her roll. I'm like, holy shit, she's dead. Like, she's rolling over down timber and rocks and this and that, and she stands up, takes off down the trail, and that's when Jake and Whitney found her. And then I kind of sat there and scratched my head a little bit. I'm like, I don't know about this one. We might have to put her down.
Like, what the hell just happened?
Pretty soon Jake come running up, and like he said, it's like, you need, or what the hell did you say?
you need
Is
help or
everything
some
good up
smart ass,
there?
probably.
And I was like, fuck no. We're in a bad spot here. And so we end up undoing her pack, and she jumps out of it, and we reload her, and we start heading back down to camp. And weren't all the clients freaked out that I was dead, or Whitney thought I was dead? But we get back to camp, and that next morning I was like, holy shit, my shoulder hurts. I was like, I don't remember hitting my shoulder. And I looked down at my shirt, because that time of year I usually don't change clothes throughout the trip. I looked down at my shirt, and it's ripped clear from my shoulder down to my elbow pretty much, and I still have that shirt today. Yeah. But that pretty much sums that up.
That's
And
your picture. You didn't get the picture, but you got the shirt.
Yeah. And Whitney the next day, because my head, it was throbbing. It would have been a pretty cool scar if it would have stayed, but it healed up pretty good. She asked me if I was concussed. I was like, no, I ain't concussed. And I think she asked me, she's like, what'd we have for breakfast? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what'd we have for breakfast? Kind of had me just caught off guard. She's like, you have a concussion? I'm like, no, I don't.
You might have, because you were acting a little loopy that night when we rolled into camp.
Breakfast? What's that?
Never heard of it. That's a good one, man. That's a good one.
Brandon?
I was sitting here thinking, and just because Cory knows my grandpa, I'm going to give one that he's told me 1,000 times by a campfire, and it's good. I'm going to cut it down because this thing could go forever. And we're going to have him on eventually, and he'll tell it. This is one of his go-to ones. But we had this big black horse named Yellowstone. He was a foxtrotter perching cross. And most people don't like foxtrotters, but he was cool. Like, he would go as slow as you wanted him to, or as fast as you wanted him to. And like, if there was one horse, and if Grandpa said, "Who do you want to ride?" and that horse is available, everybody picked him. He was just a cool. In fact, the reason why he got his name is he rode into Hawksgrass Yellowstone Meadows there when he was 3 years old, and he never misstepped, never caused a fit. And they're like, he did so good, we're just gonna call him Yellowstone. And he was that. Back to the podcast, the one bad thing about our industry is I'm going to repeat this because it's true. You're going to go through a lot of good dogs and a lot of good horses. And that was a good horse that you hate to see die or get old. And Grandpa Grandpa knew what kind of horse he was, because that was one of Grandpa's horses during the fall. Like, that was his mount. And I'll cut it down a little bit. Long story short, they had 2 bulls. And it'll be cool when he comes on and tells the whole story. But there was 2 bulls dead that they couldn't get that day, so they went back the next morning to get them. And where it was at, there was just a lot of bears. And they got the one bull. No bears touched it. And while they were heading to the next bull, they jumped a bear. And Grandpa was like, oh, yeah, there's a bear on this. And so he looks back at the packer and he's like, okay, we're going to roll up to this carcass and there's going to be some bears on it. Just do what I tell you to do. And I'd like to see the look on the kid's face because I bet he was shitting his pants. And so they roll up, and sure enough, there's a little bear on it. And Grandpa hollers at him, and I'm sure there was some vulgar language hollered at that bear. And he takes off running. And this is like give him preference, it's like I hate to say the size, but like a really nice 6-point bull. And when bears come on a carcass, they'll bury it. They'll just look like a backhoe came in. And so all you could see was his 5th and 6 sticking out of the dirt. And so, like, if he had, like, just say 50, 55-inch main beam, that's a lot of dirt piled up there. And so Grandpa's like, okay, let's get this bull. And right as the packer gets off, he's like, oh, shit, Lynn, here comes another bear. And Grandpa looks over, and here comes this littler bear. Or no, he was bigger than the first one. And so Grandpa reaches over, he's got the string, and he reaches over to a tree and while he's on his horse and ties up the tree. And he says, all right, you get those horns. If there's any meat you can get, grab it. If not, grab those horns, get it tied on. Let's go. I'm going to keep this bear away. And I'm sure the packer's like, you're going to keep this bear away? And there's a poem, and I'll find the poem. I got it somewhere. And it's called Yellowstone's Bear Cutting Ballet. And Grandpa turns this big black horse, and he starts running full speed to this bear. And this bear hits on the brakes like, holy shit, what is going on here? And anyway, just like a cutting horse, this bear decides to go right, and Grandpa keeps cutting this bear off with Yellowstone, probably 30 yards away. And the reason why this little bear was trying so hard to get this carcass is there was a bigger bear in the area. And it's just like anything, bigger bears are more dominant. And so he was trying to get meat while he could before this bigger bear basically came and kicked his ass and took all the food supply. And so, basically, just like I said, like a cutting horse, Grandpa's just going back and forth, chasing this bear off. And he keeps looking over his shoulder, and hopefully he tells him the story. And I don't remember the packer's name. He will. He's like, God damn it, tie them goddamn fucking horns on. He's like, I guess this packer's just hauling ass, just like, oh shit. Like, and of course, probably the mule's being squirrely and not standing there because there's a bear, a dead elk, and a black horse that's running back and forth. So he gets this, he cuts this bear off, and the packer's like, all right, Lynn, it's on. And they get on their horse, and this bear comes in to get this bull, and then it runs off. And he's like, what the hell? And all of a sudden, sorry, I got confused on that. This little bear comes in, and he's a little bear, and a hind quarter on an elk. How much does that weigh? Like
70 to 80, depending on the bull.
Yeah, 70, 80 pounds. This little bear comes up and picks up a hind quarter like it's chicken leg. Like it's just picks up a chicken leg and just takes off with it, hauling ass. Like, and the reason why he's doing that is there was a bigger bear in the area, and so he just took what he could get and took off with that quarter. But I wish I had the poem handy. Maybe when Grandpa comes on to our podcast, I'll find the poem and tell him. But yeah, it's a cool poem. It's called Yellowstone's Bear Cutting Ballet. And that's a story that's one of his go-to story. And when he tells it, of course, it's way better. But
That's a good one.
That's a good story.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, I gotta hear that one straight from the source.
Yeah.
They he's got a way of telling stories. It's I feel like that whole generation of guys, like, they just, I don't know, something about the way they tell stories just hits different.
That is for sure. And it keeps you, like I said, you can hear the same story 100 times, but at the same time, it keeps you in awe because you're just like waiting to hear it.
I feel like there's always one small detail every time they tell
Yeah,
it.
they forgot it the last time, so they tell it this time. Yeah.
And and you can't let the truth get in the way of a good story either. They might be adding some shit here and there.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. That's awesome. Those are good ones, guys. Yeah, but I from my end, I just thank you guys for hopping on. I know you guys are all real busy and got a lot going on with your lives and everything. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to jump on tonight with me. It's good catching up, Brandon, and good meeting you, Jeremiah and Jake. And I hope to meet you in person someday, and hopefully do some hunting.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
No, we appreciate it and hope to see you again. I know you guys come out, sometimes during the summer, just swing, let me know, and I'll try to make sure I'm there, and it'd be good to see you again. It's been too long.
I know. Been a quick 6 years already. So yeah, we're due for a link up. We'll see if the Cowboy Bar will let us back in.
Well, we might call Landon.
Yeah, get his ass up here.
That's another Wild West story that, oh man, I remember that night.
I was gonna go there with my Wild West story, and I'm like, I better not. I think his situation is a little different right now. I think he has a girl and a wife, maybe. I'm like, I better not tell this story.
Yeah, I don't care. Eventually I'm gonna tell that Wild West story. I forgot about that until you said something, but that was funny. And then you guys were egging it on. I remember. Yeah. I'm like trying to get him out. I'm like, no, and you guys were just freaking egging it on. I'm like, oh my hell.
Yeah, no, I thought. Well, luckily we got out pretty skate free, based on how it could have went. Yeah, it was. we were possibly a bad influence at the time. But it was a fun night. Good cap on a great trip for sure. So cool. Well, yeah, thanks again, guys. We'll have to do it again sometime. And good luck with your pod getting it off the ground here. It's you guys, like I said early on, you guys lead very interesting lives, and I'm sure there's tons of guys in your community that that probably enjoy listening. But I think, especially when you get into like some different audience and people who aren't as familiar with what you guys do and the ins and outs of it, I'm sure they'd definitely appreciate it. Just because, I mean, look at the show Yellowstone and all that stuff. Obviously, a little different, but like people, it's super interesting, and you guys live damn cool lives, so you should share it. So kudos to you, and good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
All right, guys, be good.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
See ya.